Welcome to Season 6 of the Excel Still More podcast. I am your host, Chris Emerson, and I am here to encourage you in your walk with the Lord, and I'm glad you've joined. Our program continues to be sponsored by Cunningham Financial Group. John is a good friend, and he's helped me and my family in everything from stock and mutual fund investing to annuities, life insurance, and retirement planning. I certainly commend him to you. If you have needs in any of those areas, you can reach him at 205-326-7364. Thank you again for your ongoing encouragement and support. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to Excel Still More. I am trying once again this interview approach, and I'm glad to get to do it. I thought maybe throughout the year, every month or two, I would share with you a friend of mine, somebody that I trust and love, who I think can contribute some things. We had Jacob Hudgins on just a few weeks ago. He has written some great books, and just wanted you to hear from him kind of, what he was driving at on those things. And so I started making a list. I thought, I'm going to make two lists. I'm going to make my friends list of people I'd love to have on, and I'm going to have like my dream list. Like Bob Goff is number one on my dream list, and we'll see how that goes. But on my friends list, the first name I wrote down was Ben Lee. And I thought, all right, let's start there. And Ben said yes. Ben, thank you for joining today.
You are welcome, Chris. Thank you for the invitation. Good to see you, bro.
Yeah. Ben's got some great stuff to share today. He has the I Can Do podcast. We'll talk about the theme of that. He preaches in the Lewisville, Texas area, the DFW area. We'll talk about some of his work there. He and I worked together in Beaumont, Texas from 12 to 2015. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But he's already created a ton of content that helps. So one of the things I hope that happens today is you're drawn to go check out Ben's content. I will tell you, Ben, you should be privileged because my friends list was Ben Lee number 1, Summer Emerson number 2, and Luke Emerson number 3. And I haven't told them yet that they got.
I don't know about that, man.
Well, you and I love this stuff. They prefer to just stay in the stories instead of be heard. But I'm working on them. I want Summer to come out like Nikki did, like your wife Nikki, like just started the podcast, started changing people's lives. So looking forward to the time, man. 2012 to 2015. Can you believe that's closing in on 10 years ago?
I know, it's been a long time. We have, it's been an amazing journey, and it's pretty crazy how fast time is moving.
I think you and I loved it there in terms of the leadership, the eldership. I remember learning so much. So Ben and I knew each other just a little bit when I got there, and I just had so many great stories. I know we need to get to real content, but one of my favorite Ben Lee stories is, and correct me on the details, but I think I said, hey, do you want to come to my house? I've got a little pond behind the house and go fishing. And I'm pretty sure you said you'd either never gone fishing or never caught a fish. And so we go back there in the little old golf cart, and he throws it in, and he gets a bite, and he reels in a bass, one of those nice little 1 pound small pond bass. And boy, he's holding it, and he's not holding it like he's scared. He's not like grabbing it, but he's holding it up by the pole. And I just remember you looking at me going, Chris, is this a catfish? Like, you have not been fishing before. Is that pretty?
I have no idea about fish. I remember going over to your house and things like that. I don't remember catching a fish, but I have very little experience with fishing. I know that's something you love to do, and I remember that cart with you guys zooming around the neighborhood and things like that. I had gone fishing when I was working with Pfizer years and years ago, and I didn't know how to do it then. And so, that tradition carried over there with understanding what kind of fish it was, for sure.
Yeah, it was great. I'm going to find it. I hope that the cover art for today's episode is a younger version of Benjamin Lee holding up a bass that may have been a catfish.
You have it because you sent me the photo. I think you sent me the photo a few months ago. So I have the photo too.
Oh man,
that's funny.
Good years, good time. We worked with
worked
with Max Dawson. We worked under some great leadership. I want to get to kind of jump in. I want to get to one of the things that you taught me in our time together that I almost feel like it has a Pfizer background. I want you to talk to us about it. But you talked about start, stop, continue as a way to be innovative and adventurous in some ways within certain capacities, but not be afraid to try things, because there's the start, the stop, and the continue. And before we get into an example or two of that, take a couple of minutes, kind of share with us what that idea is or where you got it or how you use it.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I was with Pfizer, that was from 2001 to 2009. So we would have these POA meetings, plan of action meetings, and we'd go to a really nice hotel. We'd have our team, our district manager, and then there would be bigger ones as well. But a lot of that was workshopping our presentations for our pharmaceutical drugs that we were selling and things like that. And it was also a time, Chris, to, I think, measure backwards and to see what exactly is working and how do we need to change if we're not hitting quota and things like that. So I don't know if it was one of my district managers, but it was one of the big things that stood out to me and stuck with me in those meetings: start, stop, continue. And I think we just had like a flip chart and a permanent marker, and we'd write out ideas and things like that. But the point of it was, okay, what may we need to start in our territories to increase revenue? What's this not working? Maybe we've tried it for a couple of quarters and things like that. And then what is actually working that we just need to double down on, so to speak, and continue. So that idea of start, stop, continue. And they'd spend millions of dollars on these meetings. They'd bring in guest speakers. And one of the things that was always challenging was, after the meeting, being able to follow through and be intentional. We're going to talk about that. So you have all this time talking, get all these great ideas, but then you potentially go right back out into the field and revert back to your old ways. And so it was really designed to think more, to really be honest with ourselves, to evaluate, is this actually working? What's working well? Where do we need to stop? And what's next? And so it's a good tool. I think in every area of our lives, you think about finances with a budget, you think about exercise, even certain thought patterns, that we have that we know that are not serving us well. So yeah, that started when I was in sales, and I carried that over to preaching. And I think there's some good benefits doing that as well.
I really love the way that the eldership there embraced it. You had already been there for a while before I got there. And so I'm coming into these elders meetings, and here's Ben or Max coming in saying, hey, we have this idea. We believe that there's something possible here that can do us, a lot of good. And so the first question is it authorized? Is it godly? Is it wise? Which is all very important. You don't just start out of nowhere. You have to evaluate. And I like what you're talking about. You have to measure backwards your track record and see if change is needed, and kind of plan that. And we'll get back to that in the back half of the episode. But I noticed their attitude was, hey, it's perfectly authorized. We haven't done it before, but you've pitched great possibilities. Go start it. Go try that side class. Go try that little project, because along the way, we constantly reserve the right to say, hey, you know what? We tried that and it didn't quite work out. Let's stop. Or we
Mm-hmm.
tried that and we needed to modify it some, which is often the case, but we're going to continue. Or we came upon this great idea. And from a church perspective, Ben, I felt like, we're always talking about traditionalism, where you just always do it this way, and then that becomes sort of the law. But we know that that's not the case. But your process, I think, helped with that. It helped to decipher between the
Mm-hmm.
mandatory and the optional. And I don't know. I just felt like I walked into a great environment because the attitude was, hey, let's give it a go. And I'm sure that helped us come across a lot of great ideas. And it can apply to
Mm-hmm.
churches and otherwise.
Absolutely. And I remember one of the things, that we did there was, and I did a lot in our neighborhood. We just did some Bible studies, and they'd be like a 5 or 6 week Bible study. And okay, let's try it out. We'd read a book or something by C.S. Lewis, and if it doesn't work, then that's okay. But let's give it a shot. Your color Bible marking class was fantastic, and just all the different classes and ideas that we say, hey, we've never done this before. Let's give it a shot. I don't know if you were there at the time. You may have been, or it may have been right before you got there, but we took out all the pews and put in seats, and that's a big deal, right? And that's where some of the traditions fall in. I did a sermon called Traditions and Traditions, and those are traditions that are we can change if we need to, whether it's pews or some kind of seat. But yeah, considering what's working, maybe something that could help the congregation here at West Main back in 2019. The elders made the decision, we're going to eliminate our evening worship service. It wasn't something done fast. They took every family into account. They talked to every family. And that was something that's a pretty big decision because we've just had it for so long. But that was something we decided to stop and start. And so, we worship now basically from about 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. or 11:30, depending on how long I may preach and things that are taking place afterwards. But so, yeah, I think there's a lot of great value with it. And even just with our own goals, if you start doing this, and I still do this, I'll get a notebook, and you could do it every 30 days or 60 or 90 days. What's working? What's working in my life is my morning routine. We talked about that before we hit start. If I'm not a morning person to go work out and I'm still doing that, maybe I should just stop it. Maybe I should figure out a better time where it works more effectively. But for me, I like working out in the morning time, so it's something that I continue. But I think there's wisdom reevaluating certain things, certain habits, and things like that to see maybe there's a more effective way to get things done.
And that creates a little bit of tension. And I wanted to get to that with you where you say, okay, anything that's good, let's give it a go. I love that attitude. Hey, if it's good, then it's good. If whether it lasts or whether it doesn't, let's try it. But we always have this idea that we can modify or stop. But then comes in kind of this other voice that says, if I start doing a thing church wise or individually, and it's not what I thought it was, and I stop, doesn't stop mean quit? Doesn't stop mean admission of failure? I think about, I'll bring a couple things about my history with you. And the first one I just think is funny, but it'll help you, give clarity to us on this. Ben loved to start first annual stuff. He would get super stoked about something, and he would say, let's have the first annual free turkey trot 5K, something cool, and people would come because Ben's personality, like he just draws people. So, all these people show up. They're like, we're not paying to do that one over there in town. We're going to do this free one. First annual. And I didn't run your first annual. I was not a runner at the time. But I thought, you know what?
Should have been there. You should have been there. Yeah.
Everybody loved it. So I thought next year I'm training. So I'm training a little bit. And I come to Ben in like September. I'm like, I can't wait for the second annual. He goes, we're not doing that again. I said, what do you mean you're not doing that again? It's first annual. You have signed up for a second. But for Ben, it's like, I started it with the intent of having 100 of them. And then, you know what? We just needed to modify. And Ben is a lot of things. Almost all of them are great. None of them is quitter, but he is modifier. So help us kind of resolve that healthy tension of stop versus quit.
That's actually a really great question. I will say this too. I think your mother-in-law won one of those races.
She did.
And she was there. Yeah. We had gift cards and things like that.
Shout out to Justin McCorkle on that. Justin McCorkle was the preacher. He was so great at running. He got toasted by my mother-in-law.
Yeah, that's a good thing to think about. So maybe I can start with an example here, Chris. I like football. I like the NFL. The Los Angeles Rams went to the Super Bowl with who's the quarterback for the Detroit Lions? His name is slipping. I can't remember his name right now. Goff. They went to the Super Bowl with I think it's Jared Goff. And then like the next year, they traded him. Why would you trade a quarterback that just went to the Super Bowl? Well, they're evaluating, okay, we got to the Super Bowl. We see some of his limitations. We need to make a change. So they trade for Matthew Stafford, and they go back to another Super Bowl, and they win the Super Bowl. Doug Peterson, the coach for the Philadelphia Eagles, wins a Super Bowl, gets to the playoff every year, the next couple of years. Leadership says it's time for a change. Well, they were winning. So when you look at this, part of it is being honest, I think, with where we may be. It is possible where we can just say, I quit. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm out. And okay, then we make that decision. The other way to look at it, though, is to say, no, we see where we are as a team, as a family, in a career. This is not working out. This is going to hold me back maybe from my faith, or this is no longer wise for me to do. That's the difference, I think, where the stopping comes in. It is. It could be, kind of dangerous where you say, "No, I'm just going to stop and do something else." There is something about follow through. I've been guilty of that as well, where we do need to be able to follow through with things. Our reputation, that's important with that, and saying we're going to do this and then follow through. So there is something very important with that. And yet at the same time, I think we all understand, well, if I just keep doing the same thing every year, you think about Texas and these storms that have happened for the last 3 or 4 years. If we say, well, we're just going to keep doing the same thing, we're not going to turn our water on, we're not going to put anything on the highways, well, now we're asking for trouble. So we have to be able to evaluate and say, no, this is the wrong path. Let me make some in-game adjustments, or let me make some life-changing adjustments. And so that, I think that's the distinction between stopping and quitting. Quitting is just, no, I don't want to do it. We're lazy, apathetic, we're frustrated. But even with that, there has to be something where, and I think all of us have gotten to a point. I mean, you think about moving from one state to the next state, or making a career change or something like that. People have said, look, I'm not making enough money and I've tried everything and this isn't going to work. I need to add something. So I think it's looking at the numbers. I think it's measuring and having certain things in place that you can actually allow yourself to measure and to really make a wise decision. I'll also add this too, having good mentors, having someone to bounce this idea off. Stopping a first annual free 5K, consequences are slim to none. You're a little bit upset with me because you've been training, and certainly don't want to disappoint people who are doing that. But there are some bigger things for sure where we just say, no, I'm just stopping. Then we can be in trouble if we're just going down the path of quitting.
Yeah, and quitting is something we could talk more about, the attitude associated with that. But I hope that the person listening gets that, what we're talking about is there are many people who get stuck in their habits that they know aren't working. They've started it. Maybe pride says, I'm going to keep going, even though it's not the best thing. We're talking about before you burn out, make the change, make the cut, get with mentors, figure out a better path. You're not a quitter if you're avoiding disaster by that change. I like that you put that up at the end. You said, look, a 5K is nothing, but there are things that are much more important. And so we need to understand what our options are. Our options are give it a go. If it's godly, give it a go. I think you and I in our podcast each would really promote just go for it, but also don't be afraid to say this wasn't the right thing. And also don't ignore better. And I think that's what you've done a lot in your life. You've said, look, it's going to look like I'm stopping that to do this, but what I'm really doing is that helped me discover better ways. And I'm going to kind of get rid of that iteration to try to get to the next iteration. And you think about those examples that you gave. I mean, they saw something that said we can get from here to better, and we need to make a change to do it. I remember you talking about something serious, and then you can come back with some thoughts. Remember, well, I mean, you remember, but Ben had very serious heart scare condition that really became known in the time that I was there with him, and it meant potential life change. I'll let you tell the story of that, but I remember you coming and saying, look, for the next year or two, I'm scheduled to go preach at certain places, but right now in my mind, there are things that need to take priority. And most would say, well, tough. I mean, you're set up to do those things, just figure it out. And I remember you saying, I'm going to call them and tell them I'm not doing them. I need to clean that slate in order to prioritize what my heart says matters most. And I think when you come back and comment on this, you're going to talk about balance and all that, but tell us a little bit about what you were thinking there and how that connects to this idea.
Yeah, and remind me, I want to share a book with you as well that I think will touch on this. So it was 2014. I was actually working out at the gym. I was supposed to be doing a by the book Bible study with Max online on the Holy Spirit. Worked out, had a cheeseburger earlier that day, felt really good. Then I felt really weird on the treadmill, not because of the cheeseburger, but just everything inside of me. And I started sweating profusely. I sweat a lot anyway, but this was different. All of my teeth started hurting. My face was hurting. I've never had a heart attack, but I said, you know what? This is what a heart attack I think would feel like. So I was that stubborn guy. I sat there for a few minutes, went to the urgent care. Health insurance was on my mind. I don't want to pay a lot of money. And went to urgent care, and they're like, you need to go to the hospital. So called Nikki. She was shopping. I said, you need to come meet me here. What happened was I had a blood clot in my right coronary artery. So I had gotten diagnosed about 10 years earlier with a heart condition, or 7 years earlier, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, HCM. And I'm in a particular subset of that where I have what's called an apical aneurysm. So the doctors think that it originated from that. So I had a procedure to get that aneurysm pulled out, or that blood clot rather pulled out. Been on blood thinners ever since. So I've been on blood thinner now for 10 years. And so, Chris, going back to that time, I don't think I really understood the mental side of a lot of things. I did, but when you go through something traumatic, how that affects the person, how that affects our spouses. And so, yeah, I remember, I think you came into my office and I'm just pondering about life. And I'm thinking, you know what? I'm going to cancel these meetings. And you're like, well, take it easy now. Don't do that. And I was like, no, I'm going to do it. And I did. And, everything worked out well. Thank the Lord. I still have meetings. In hindsight, there were some other times where I should have done that as well, too. Nikki, she had a molar pregnancy. She had pneumonia one Sunday. I'm teaching a Bible class. A sister comes in and says, hey, Nikki's got to go to the ER. What do you want to do? And I'm supposed to preach. I should have said, hey, guys, I got to go to the hospital with my wife. But I ended up preaching that day. And that had a negative effect on her, because I'm like, well, man, I'm going to the ER here. What's going on? We have 2 or 3 preachers for the most part always there. Someone could have filled in that one day. And I just saw this last year too, Chris. It was with my mom. She had to go to the hospital. I was fully prepared for a gospel meeting. I called the brother. She went in like on a Wednesday. I'm like, man, I have no idea what's going on. I had an idea, I guess, but I don't know how long what's going to happen. And he said, look, we'll get somebody else to fill in. It was 2 guys, me and another brother, that were going to preach. And I was disappointed. And at the same time, looking back, I'm happy I was there for my mom, because it was really traumatic. And there were some really difficult things. So if I'm saying anything, I'm saying, there are those moments where we have to evaluate and say, okay, there are things that are going to be more important. As much as I love preaching the gospel and teaching the gospel in churches, being prepared to have a brother there's still a balance. And so this isn't me just saying, well, I'm pretty tired, I don't want to do that anymore. No, this is a life-changing issue. And it usually takes something big like that, or hopefully something like that, to really wake us up to see, okay, time out, new rules, let's reevaluate.
Yeah. And we're going to get in the back half of this episode in a moment to this idea of living intentionally. And it seems to me that requires some real mental clarity on what matters most in your life. What are those most significant things and people? I really struggle with exactly what you're talking about, which is letting people down, changing a designated schedule, not really understanding the need of the moment in a way that says, hey, I need to stop or modify right now. That brings to mind a story from about 7 years ago when I was scheduled to go preach in another state, and my father-in-law, Summer's dad, was in a motorcycle accident, and it was just I can't remember the exact days, but maybe 2 or 3 days before I was scheduled to go. And so everybody's headed there, and I had to decide, but I thought, I'm scheduled to go. I need to go. I should go. So I went. And it was a full week meeting too. I was gone for that whole week. And the people there were great, and we modified the sermons to be about prayer. And obviously I was talking to my family every day, but I got back home after that, and he passed away not too long after that. And I just look back on that moment. It's really interesting for me to look back on it now from even just 7 years ago and think, I definitely know I should have done the other thing. Like, that's what I believe. I should have said, hey guys, look, hate to disappoint, hate to stop and modify. But even now, looking back, I think that would have still even now been a very difficult decision to make. So there's this mental understanding of needful intentional priority, but even now I'm struggling with that, which is why I brought you on and wanted to talk about, living intentionally isn't just, building out a great plan and going and doing it. It's actually a series of really tough decisions. where
Right.
something has to be
Yeah.
cut to allow for something else. So Ben, you can wrap up those thoughts if you want, or skip forward. But we talked about just how all this comes together and living intentionally. You made some neat comments.
Hmm.
I was marking down some notes when you were talking about even Pfizer, and I think a lot of what you brought to preaching has come from your experience with Pfizer. But you talked about plan of action meetings and measuring backwards, and then I wrote down, projecting forward. I mean, this idea that says, can I take an evaluation that says, number one, I need to measure backwards and see what's working and what isn't, and be honest about that, and throw pride out the window collectively as an organization or as an individual. Then I need to create a plan of action moving forward and kind of project what that's going to look like. But then, do you know how many people want their lives to be better? Practically everyone. But I don't think enough people know what it looks like or know how to release the weights that are preventing it. So just dig in on that and tell us a little bit about how you think about those things.
Yeah, so many things to say. A couple of things, then we'll move into that with living intentional. One, that meeting that I did not go to because of my mom being in the hospital, everything worked out fine. A soul was saved. I wasn't there. And it was just a reminder it is not about me. And it could have just been providential. Who knows? I have no idea. Secondly, I mentioned a book. 10x is better than 2x. This is more of an entrepreneur book. Dan Sullivan, he's one of my favorite coaches I like to follow, and a psychologist named Benjamin Hardy. 10x is better than 2x. 2x is essentially this idea, and it's entrepreneurship, but you can still equate it to your life where you're just kind of like doing the same thing, or maybe you're doing something a little bit harder. But 10x is really taking a step back and looking at, okay, you use the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of your success or business is going to come from, 20% of people or a particular thing. And being able to look at, okay, if I just keep doing the same thing, I'll still be successful, but I'm just kind of a 2x, it's taking a long time and things like that. Or maybe I need to reimagine what I'm doing, even if it means taking a step back for a little bit to really propel me to 10x. And I think there's something there. It's a very fascinating book, and I recommend it when you start thinking about being intentional and measuring. And that language that I just shared earlier, always measure backwards, is something that they talk about as well. They have another book called The Gap and the Gain. And when you measure backwards, you'll be able to see, how far you've really gotten along. Chris, you are right. A lot of people want a certain life and certainly want to be successful and feel like we're moving forward. And it does require being intentional. And maybe one of the best ways to get started, and obviously I think everything we're saying here, we understand from a faith standpoint, right? The Bible is our authority and things like that. But really, people have to really ask themselves, what exactly do I want? What exactly does success look like for me? So I was talking to a friend. Her child is going to this really prestigious college, but it's number 3 in depression rate for students there. Okay, well, is that success because they're going to this great school, but their kids are depressed and suicide is a major risk problem? So when we start thinking about living intentionally, what is it that really matters to us the most? I think all of us are going to say faith, Jesus. Okay, well, if that's the case, then the actions and habits in our lives should depict that. And if it's not the case, then is that really the most important? We really have to be honest with ourselves and ask what is most important. Fitness is something that's really important. And a lot of people say, I know I need to work out. I should be working out, but okay, well, why aren't you doing it then? Is how important is it really? And so as we start thinking about being intentional, we really need to ask, what is it that we're going after? What is it that we want? I like the story of Nehemiah, one of my favorite stories in the Bible. Nehemiah is the perfect example about being intentional. He gets bad news. He prays about that bad news for 2 or 3 months. He's got one mission before the king and the queen. He goes there. He evaluates the situation. He's got one job: rebuild the wall. And he is so intentional. He'll stay up half the night, have a weapon in one hand, a shovel in another hand, and he gets it done with everybody else in 52 days. When we're intentional and focused on one thing, it is mind-boggling what we'll be able to get done. But we have to figure out, what is it that I'm actually going after?
Man, that is so true. And what's so cool about that story, and Ben and I both fell in love with Nehemiah around the same time, I think, and have been preaching him just continually, is that was an infectious idea. I mean, when he showed up and they walked over that rubble every day. For them, it just wasn't possible. They were just living. I wouldn't say they were living intentionally or optimistically. And you're right. He comes in with God on his side and he pulls them together. And so I think there's that element too. And that's what you're doing with your podcast and preaching and work. But anybody listening can do that too. If you'll get a clear vision, you'll pursue it. Others will hop on and do that with you. When we talk about living intentionally, I think we just need to make a plan. I sometimes say when I meet with teenagers, tell me where you want to be a year from now. Just dream it up. Go crazy. I mean, you're not going to, grow wings or get a instant teleporter to Disney or something, but like within the realm of realistic behavior, tell me what you are doing and who you are a year from now, because I'm here to tell you, if God is with us, we can get there. But it starts with vision. And it made me think about your podcast title, I Can Do. I want to talk to you about three phrases as we wind this down. I can do, I want to do, and I need to do, which are all a little bit different. But start with how someone listening says, I don't even know that I'm exploring what's possible. Maybe I'm stuck in pride. Maybe I'm afraid to start something I may have to stop. Maybe I'm afraid to stop something that has started. How do you give me a short pitch on the I can do vision for what's possible?
Mm. Mm. Yeah, that's a great question. First, let me just say, I can do came from the fact that I had a implantable cardioverter defibrillator. So 30 years old, piece of metal in my chest. That's what ICD stood for. And I just decided I'm going to rename it and turn it into something even more positive. So how do we have a mindset of, let's just see what's possible? I think you touched on it a little bit. One, we have to be willing to dream. Two, we need to mix things up. I think sometimes, even something as small as drive to work or drive to school a different way. Mix it up. Do something different with your daily routine. When we get stuck in the same routine every day, while that can be good, you just don't really think about anything else. Three, interact with other people, have people challenge some of your thoughts and ideas. What is it, what exactly is possible? A lot of times, depending on who we hang around with, we start thinking like they do. So if you're hanging around with people who say, well, this is the furthest I can go, well, you need to be careful with that. And I'm pretty sure you've done podcasts on that, right? Your inner circle and friends and things like that. Four, there is something about just writing down things you like to do. I did that in 2016. I was reading a book, and they just said, write down 10 adventures you want to do. And number one was working out with Bill Phillips. I used to take his supplements all the time. He wrote the best-selling book, Body for Life, and I would take his EAS products in college. And it was August 2016. And Bill Phillips started a Facebook Live workout group. And I was like, man, I just deleted Facebook. Now, so I got back on, and I was only in his group. I had zero friends. And then in February and March of 2017, or March and April, he asked me to come speak at one of his camps in Golden, Colorado. So I got to work out with Bill Phillips. It was my number one list. And so there's something about, what exactly are you going after? And it is interesting when we start, just wondering. I remember, Chris, let me just share this here real quickly. Junior year in high school, English class, we made a journal. And it was something like that too. Write down 25 things you want to do. One of those 25 things was preach in faraway places. I wrote down. I got to go to Africa, get married. I got married. All like 6 things, but there was one: run a marathon and finish. And I was just looking at it last year, and I said, "Man, I'm 45, and if I don't start doing this now, I'm not going to be able to do it." So I signed up for the marathon in September. I had only been running like 2 miles, never done it before. Put it on December 16th because the previous year I had gained 17 pounds. And I said, I can't keep gaining all this weight. So I was intentional. I'm going to do it at this time. I got to figure out how to get a plan. I had friends who helped me out with the plan. So, and I ran it. It wasn't record breaking speed. It was 5 hours and 33 minutes, I think.
Hey.
But I finished the marathon. And there is something really empowering about that of I can do, get started. I need to do it. Well, then figure out what's the next step. You don't have to have everything figured out, but you need to take a step. And so I walked some, I jogged some. My point is, we all can do things if we're willing to, put in the work, if we're willing to be brave, be willing to fail. I remember, I think when you first started your podcast, so you talked about how you were nervous when you walked into the closet that very first episode and hit the record button.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you just stayed nervous for 5 more years, there is no podcast. So it's just overcoming, I think, fear. And, what would you do if you weren't afraid? That's a quote that people have used before. What would you do if you weren't afraid? And so it's knowing, okay, I've never done this, but let's give it a shot and let's see. And if it doesn't work out, I can tell myself, I gave it a shot. If preaching didn't work out, I moved to Dowling Road and they said, if it doesn't work out in the first 6-7 weeks, we'll send you on your way. Okay, let's give it a shot. I could go back and do something else, but we have to be willing to try it.
So was that your first annual marathon?
I'm not going to say anything about our first annual because I was just telling Nikki, I don't know how I did it. You really have to put yourself in a mindset if you're going to be intentional too. You have to put your attention on your intention. You have to put your attention on your intention. And so that really consumed 4 months because I got to find the time to run 9, 10 miles, 12 miles, 15 miles, 18 miles. And so no, I'm not committing to another one right now. That's something else I've learned about myself. Take your time, but really count the cost. Count the cost is about being intentional. The story in Luke 14, the guy who began the build. Well, if you're going to build, you got to be intentional. You got to know, okay, what's actually going to be required.
Yeah. So a couple of thoughts for the one listening, and then I'll kind of ask you to branch into 2 subcategories here at the end. What he's talking about is I can do. You can't do what you can't imagine, what you haven't prayed through or consulted God about. We need to sit down and explore what's possible. I love the idea of writing things down, of visualizing those things. You have nothing that you're aiming at, you'll hit nothing every time, that kind of an idea. Now, once you've chosen that, maybe you start trying some things. And I made 2 subnotes here. We've got I can do, I want to do, and I need to do, but I don't want to. So here's the thing. I'm going to use your running. You wanted to run a marathon. You saw yourself doing it. It mattered to you. There were probably aspects of that you were drawn to and wanted to do and loved to do, which I would tell people, do that now. Like, jump in. Don't worry about what people think about it. Don't worry about if it's going to turn into something. Just take the stuff you're already drawn to do and do it. But I have to imagine that training for that marathon, there were parts where you did not want to do this, but you knew you needed to do it to reach that goal. Now, on the end, as I'm saying this out loud, I'm thinking that goal has to have enough value that you've decided this is something I'm starting and not stopping, because you're not going to get to ride on just the parts that you want to do. If all it ever took is stuff you love doing, you would have already done it. So tell us how, as you were going through that process, I can do this. I believe I can do this. Now there's the part I want to do and the part that I don't. How do I keep that second thing going, even as that first thing sometimes isn't there?
I think the big distinction is understanding motivation versus commitment. Motivation versus commitment. Motivation can be high if you have a lot of caffeine one day, if you get the perfect amount of sleep, if you watch the perfect video on YouTube or have the perfect song. Commitment is going to carry you through those days, even when you don't feel motivated. I paid money for this marathon. I'm going to run this marathon. I've told Nikki, Josh, so he's looking at me. I've told other people, but also it's something I want to do, and it's something I want to prove to myself. So I would say, Chris, the distinction, and think about the ramifications of this. This reaches every area of our lives, our marriages, overcoming, sinful habits, bad habits, we're not always going to be motivated, but we've made a commitment to the Lord. You are my Lord. This is what you want me to do. I'm going to remain committed. And so I think that's really the big distinction, where you're absolutely right. Sometimes it was inconvenient to work out. Sometimes I'm running in the early evening time. I don't like doing that. Motivation will only take you so far. Commitment is where it's at. So you need to set yourself up, whether it's paying for like the marathon, putting it in your calendar, setting aside that time, letting other people know who can encourage you, having a plan in place. I got a novice running plan from a friend of mine. So I had something that it wasn't just me kind of figuring out, maybe I'll just run 4. That is how that commitment will stay strong. Okay, remember, you've been talking about this since you were a junior in high school. So let's follow through. And also thinking about and visualizing, Chris, December 16th, I'm going to feel really good. If I don't follow through with this, I know if I wake up that day and I haven't done it, I'm going to feel terrible. And so there's just something about following through and getting it done. Commitment is going to be much greater than motivation.
That's great. And you saw December 16th. You saw the payoff. It was worth it. Summer right now, she's a runner, and she's been thinking about doing a full marathon coming up in a couple of months. I know she can do it. There's no question. But what she hasn't settled in yet is she visualizes herself crossing that finish line. And I don't know that she's particularly excited about that. I don't know that she says, that will have met a goal that really matters to me. That will be something that I want one of those stickers on my car. Like, I don't think she's convinced herself that that's the version of her that she needs to be seeking. Now, me as a supportive husband, I'm like, that would be awesome, and it'd be great. But I don't know that it is to her. What's interesting is she actually loves to run. So I don't even know that she would have to go through a hard process of, I need to do this and I don't want to do it. It just will require sacrifice, time away from her family. But the point is, it hasn't really burned in her heart. If it did, if she sat down and said, Chris, I want this, I think this would be so great. I feel like it might, like you said, we would do it. We would push through. But I'm just back to that visualization I can do thing. Create in your mind a better version of yourself. See what it looks like. Set up a time frame and start believing. And then you start trying things, right? You try little things. I want to finish with this idea. You mentioned some stuff from James Clear that I think is kind of fun that you're going to be preaching on. He preaches at the West Main Church in Louisville, Church of Christ up there. And James Clear is really cool. We both read Atomic Habits and talked about him, and he mentions hats and haircuts and tattoos. And I'm going to let you explain it, but it made me think about little changes. Just see, one Wednesday night, I'd read a book about something about, hey, try little changes, see if it puts you on this great path. I decided to just part my hair the opposite way. Like, I'd never done it in my life. Like, you know what I'm doing tonight for church? I'm just going to part my hair, which is kind of like the first thing you're going to describe out of the 3. And I just went to church with it parted the other way. I mean, just imagine that. That's it. Just, and I think people's heads exploded. Like, there was so much like negative. What did you do? What's wrong with you? Are you sick? Like, did you just lose 10 pounds of hair in a week? And I thought, that did nothing for me. I don't feel like I know myself better. I just feel like nobody knows how to look at me. But that was a very small, moderate trial change to just see if a new pathway was something that would be invigorating. But there are levels to that. So help us use James Clear's stuff and how you're going to preach on it, but walk us through the different levels of giving something a go.
Okay, so the James Clear hats, haircuts, and tattoos, I actually just read it. We're recording on a Friday, read it in an email. I was like, oh, this is so good. It's all about decisions. So if you buy a hat and you don't look good in it, fine. You can take the hat off. Minimal, zero damage is done. That decision, bad decision, move on from it. You get a bad haircut and you tell them you just want a little bit off the top and they shave you bald. Well, you're going to have to live with that decision for a couple of weeks, or you get some other kind of haircut or something like that. But you can still overcome that and you can move on from that. You get a tattoo, that's permanent. And when you look in the mirror, take a shower, you're going to be reminded about that decision. So I want to do a sermon on decision making, wise decision making. And I think there's even something there about living intentionally. Sometimes we go straight for the tattoo and we don't think about, wait a second, this tattoo, this may not be a good idea 10 years from now. So I want to talk a little bit about that. I want to circle back to what you were talking about with summer. Um, it's really interesting too. In that book, The Gap and the Gain. So I had a lot of fear running this marathon. And one of the exercises they talk about is always measure backwards. Always measure backwards. It's hard sometimes for us to see something in the future. The horizon keeps moving forward. But someone who may be like in Summer's position, she measures backwards and says, well, you know what? I have run a 5K. I have done a 10K. Maybe I've done a half marathon. I have been able to handle this situation for 3 or 4 months. Then that can give her, and along with us, confidence of something that maybe we've never done before. So that's another way when we are maybe nervous or really trying to see, is this actually possible? Where do we get that confidence? Confidence is earned. And so one way to see that is to say, well, wait, if I look back the last 5 years or 10 years, I've gone further than I probably thought I would 10 years earlier. You know, we're both 45. I believe we're 45. I'm 45. Well, 10 years earlier when I was 35, man, look at what I've done and what you've done these last 10 years. So there's things that we haven't done, and I can still look back, measure backwards and say, well, I was able to get that done. So I think I can use something from that to help me to move forward and to really push through the fear. I had a lot of fear. It is scary because it's 26.2 miles and it is time consuming. And we have one child. It's a lot, and so, but I think looking back at past wins, that is another way where we can push through and say, no, I can do this, and I'll be able to follow through.
Yeah, yeah. I just made a note about beware of happiness. When I look at my life and I think about something like running that marathon or branching out and doing some kind of foreign mission work I want to do, or learning another language so I can do it, and I look at that and I think, man, I can visualize that and I can see benefit. I want to start that. I don't think I'll stop it when I start it. I think it has that kind of value. But one of the things that I rest on is, okay, my life is I'm content. I have a happy life. I think in general, a happy, joyful life. And what that can keep you from doing is it can keep you from visualizing better. I think that works both ways. Some people have just really catastrophic lives and they can't even imagine how they could ever get to better. But I think if you're somebody who says, that's not my life, I've got a pretty good, content life going, well, beware of that too, because living intentionally and pushing the limits and becoming Christ like, there needs to be some hard in there. And that's why I brought you on, Ben. You're so good at kind of getting people to go hard. Hard is good if you've got this vision and you're not afraid of start, stop, continue. Hard is really, really
Right.
good. And I was asking somebody the other day, I said, do we do anything hard? Like maybe we do some hard things. And so setting some goals,
Yeah.
and then, you dabble in it. Maybe you start something small, but the more you believe, answer this, I guess, is a question. I mean, would you say the more you really believe that Christ is pushing you, maybe the heavier you jump in, whether it's hats
Mm-hmm.
or haircuts or tattoos. I was thinking about
Mm-hmm.
dating. I mentioned to you as an example before the show. When you said hats, haircuts, tattoos, I thought a hat is like going on a date with somebody. A haircut is like entering into a serious relationship, and a tattoo is marriage. I mean, you're in now, and
Yeah.
and that's a big decision. But some
Right.
things require that kind of commitment, and
Yeah.
and it can be hard, but
Yeah.
it's too valuable to pass up. So thank you for all this. Wrap it up. Give us some thoughts, and then we'll land this plane.
Yeah, you're welcome, and thank you for having me on the show. This has been a really fun conversation. As we think about the kingdom of God, I think you're right, Chris. We are to be content, but and we also we have our heavenly Father, and as much as we talk about success and races and entrepreneurship and things like that, what if we had this 10x mentality with the kingdom of God? Obviously, we're dealing with hearts and things, but what if we said, no, I am going to do some hard things, and not just thinking come from a smaller standpoint, but what might actually be possible? What might be possible if I opened up my doors in my neighborhood and said, no, I'm gonna reach everybody, or I'm gonna try something I've never done before. I think that really gets exciting. And as you think about happiness, I liked what Benjamin Hardy said. Some people may not like this, I don't know, but you think about America, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. He said it should be more the expanse of happiness. Can we be happy with where we are and what we currently have, and continue to expand that? Because people can pursue something and they're maybe just missing out on what they already have. They have everything. And when we're in Christ, we have everything. We are complete in Christ. So I think that should be a challenge for us to start thinking about, maybe I don't need to go after all these accolades, or of course we don't, but maybe I don't need to build all these other things. Maybe I need to focus more on expanding the kingdom of God. And then that's where it really gets exciting to see God at work and how he can use us. So that requires being intentional, just like waking up on a Sunday morning and getting to worship services, reading our Bibles and prayer, texting that person when they're on your mind, or giving them a phone call. All of that's intentional. Hugging our children, encouraging them, dating our spouse. It's all intentional. And when we start looking at it from a godly perspective, our lives will be even greater.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. That's a wonderful wrap up. Here are a couple of thoughts about that. If you check the show notes, I will have links to his podcast, the I Can Do podcast. We'll link the books that were referenced in today's episode. You can see what Ben's thing is. You can see why he's helped and influenced so many people in faith, and particularly in faith, but also I would say in fitness and in other areas as well. If words like expanding and more and better, different, fearlessness, if those are words that are interesting to you and you want to pursue what's possible, then I know Ben can help. And so I'll send you in his direction, and he can have you walking around saying 3 really, really valuable words: I can do. Thank you so much for joining in today. If you enjoyed this episode, I hope you'll consider sharing it with a friend. Speaking of friends, if you have any mortgage-related needs, maybe you're a first-time home buyer looking to refinance, or just want to talk about future home ownership goals, reach out to Tyler Cain. He is a senior loan officer with Fairway Independent Mortgage. Tyler and his team, with their expertise and dedication, have helped many families achieve their home ownership goals. They can advise you on the process from start to finish. His website is included in the show notes, or you can reach him directly at 813-380-8487. And please remember, whatever you choose to do today, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, excel still more.